Hello everyone, waving hand. I never thought I'd be telling this story, but I need some advice. Please share your thoughts in the comments because I can't make sense of what's happening. My name's Daniel, 36. 6 months ago, I came terrifyingly close to not being here at all. A sudden infection put me in the hospital for weeks, followed by months of painful recovery. Mara, my wife of 8 years, was at my bedside every day, or so I thought. She brought flowers, scolded the nurses for moving me too soon, whispered that we'd plan a trip once I was strong again. I held on to that promise through the worst nights. But once I came home, cracks began to show. She was restless, snapping at the smallest things, how I arranged my medication, the way I fell asleep in the living room. Sometimes she'd leave to get groceries and come back hours later, smelling faintly of wine and expensive perfume. If I asked, she'd smile thinly and say, "Don't be needy, Daniel, you're recovering, not in prison." I wanted to believe stress was eating at her. Caring for someone sick isn't easy. But little details kept needling me, receipts for places she never mentioned, her phone lighting up with messages she'd swipe away before I could read them, a certain way she went quiet whenever I walked into the room. I'd fought so hard to get my life back. Now I wasn't sure if the life waiting for me was even real. Something was wrong, and I had the uneasy feeling that my battle hadn't ended in the hospital, it had just changed shape. The first real proof didn't arrive as a thunderclap. It crept in, quiet and deliberate, while I was still convincing myself that Mara was only tired from taking care of me. One rainy Thursday, I woke from an afternoon nap to an empty house. Her note on the counter said, "Quick grocery run, back soon." I tried to settle with tea and a book, but an hour slipped by, then 2. While tidying up, I noticed her handbag half-zipped on the sofa. A receipt poked out from between her wallet and a scarf. It was for 2 glasses of Sauvignon Blanc and a shared dessert at a bistro across town, timestamped 20 minutes after she'd left for groceries. I felt an icy pulse at the base of my neck. Maybe she'd met a friend, I reasoned. But the name of the bistro nodded me. I'd passed it before, the sort of cozy, candlelit place that doesn't lend itself to casual shopping breaks. Later that evening she breezed in, cheeks pink from the cold, a single paper bag swinging from her wrist. Inside, bread, coffee, and nothing else. "Traffic was insane," she said, pressing a quick kiss to my temple before hurrying to put the kettle on. I watched her hands steady, almost too careful, as she unpacked. My mind flashed back to the receipt folded in my pocket. Over the next few days, I became a quiet observer in my own home. I started noticing the patterns, how she always put her phone face down, how she turned the volume low during certain calls, how she'd snap if I asked who she was texting. The same woman who'd held my hand through fevered nights now felt like a stranger rehearsing lines. The hardest part wasn't the receipt itself, it was the feeling that the person I trusted to guard my life while I was fighting for it had been slipping through another door entirely, one she'd never meant me to see. That realization settled into my chest like a stone. Whatever was happening wasn't an innocent misunderstanding. It was deliberate, and it was waiting for me to uncover it. I didn't jump in the moment I found that receipt. I let the knowledge simmer, waiting for a chance to see how she'd handle a question she couldn't prepare for. That chance came 3 nights later. Mara had just returned from what she claimed was a late pharmacy run. She tossed her keys on the counter, cheeks flushed, and went straight for a glass of wine. I watched her for a moment, then said, as calmly as I could, "Can we sit down? I want to talk about something important." Her eyes flicked to mine, wary. "Is this another lecture about me leaving you alone too long?" "No," I said, sliding the receipt across the table. "This is about you telling me you were buying groceries, while you were here, sharing wine at a bistro." Her lips parted for half a second before she caught herself. She gave a small, dismissive laugh. "Daniel, seriously? You're digging through my stuff now? That's unsettling." "I found it sticking out of your purse," I replied. "You didn't exactly hide it." She sighed, rolled her eyes, and took a sip of wine. "Fine. I stopped for a drink with a client. It was last minute, and I didn't want you to worry while you're still recovering." I searched her face for sincerity. All I saw was a thin masked irritation covering something sharper. "Who was it?" I asked. "Just a colleague from the gallery," she said quickly. We talked about a commission. You're making this into a conspiracy. But her tone was too brittle, her fingers too tight on the stem of the glass. I'm not imagining things, Mara, I said quietly. You're disappearing for hours, and your stories don't add up. If I can fight to stay alive, the least I deserve is honesty. Her jaw tightened. God, Daniel, you don't know how hard it's been keeping this house together while you were sick. I can't breathe without you questioning me. There it was, the turn from explanation to attack. She wanted me to feel guilty for noticing. I didn't push further, I could tell the wall was up. But as she stalked off to the bedroom, glass in hand, I knew that whatever she was hiding, it was bigger than a casual drink. And for the first time, a thought I'd been avoiding settled squarely in my mind. If she could lie so easily about this, what else had she been hiding while I was fighting for my life? I didn't jump in the moment I found that receipt. I let the knowledge simmer, waiting for a chance to see how she'd handle a question she couldn't prepare for. That chance came 3 nights later. Mara had just returned from what she claimed was a late pharmacy run. She tossed her keys on the counter, cheeks flushed, and went straight for a glass of wine. I watched her for a moment, then said, as calmly as I could, "Can we sit down? I want to talk about something important." Her eyes flicked to mine, wary. "Is this another lecture about me leaving you alone too long?" "No," I said, sliding the receipt across the table. "This is about you telling me you were buying groceries, while you were here sharing wine at a bistro." Her lips parted for half a second before she caught herself. She gave a small, dismissive laugh. "Daniel, seriously? You're digging through my stuff now? That's unsettling." "I found it sticking out of your purse," I replied. "You didn't exactly hide it." She sighed, rolled her eyes, and took a sip of wine. "Fine. I stopped for a drink with a client. It was last minute, and I didn't want you to worry while you're still recovering." I searched her face for sincerity. All I saw was a thin mask irritation covering something sharper. "Who was it?" I asked. "Just a colleague from the gallery," she said quickly. "We talked about a commission. You're making this into a conspiracy." But her tone was too brittle, her fingers too tight on the stem of the glass. "I'm not imagining things, Mara," I said quietly. You're disappearing for hours, and your stories don't add up. If I can fight to stay alive, the least I deserve is honesty. Her jaw tightened. God, Daniel, you don't know how hard it's been keeping this house together while you were sick. I can't breathe without you questioning me. There it was, the turn from explanation to attack. She wanted me to feel guilty for noticing. I didn't push further, I could tell the wall was up. But as she stalked off to the bedroom, glass in hand, I knew that whatever she was hiding, it was bigger than a casual drink. And for the first time, a thought I'd been avoiding settled squarely in my mind. If she could lie so easily about this, what else had she been hiding while I was fighting for my life? That night, after Mara shut herself in the bedroom, I sat alone in the living room with only the hum of the refrigerator for company. My body still ached from months of recovery, but it was nothing compared to the knot forming under my ribs. The receipt, her brittle excuses, the way she turned everything back on me, they looped in my mind, refusing to quiet. I'd faced fever spikes and nights when even breathing hurt, but this felt worse in a way I couldn't explain. When I'd been sick, the enemy was clear: bacteria, fevers, blood tests. Now the threat wore my wife's smile and spoke in her voice. I tried to sleep, but every creak of the house jolted me awake. My thoughts ran wild. Where had she gone when I was fighting to get better? Who had been worth lying for while I lay in a hospital bed, counting the seconds between 4 drips? By morning, the sadness hit me full force. I moved through the house like a ghost, staring at the photos on the hallway wall, snapshots of trips, birthdays, tiny victories. I searched her face in each frame, wondering when that secret self had arrived, and how I'd missed the warning signs. Mara, on the other hand, behaved as though nothing had happened. She hummed while making coffee, scrolling through her phone, chatting about errands. When I mentioned the therapy brochure the hospital counselor had given us, she waved it off. "You're reading too much into things," she said. "You need rest, not more stress." That dismissal cut deeper than any outright argument. It told me she didn't take my hurt seriously, or worse, she didn't care if I saw the truth. For a few days, I went through motions, doctor checkups, short walks, trying to keep up with work emails. But inside I was sinking, pulled between fury and a grief so heavy it pressed behind my eyes. I replayed every moment of my illness, every time she'd left to grab a coffee, wondering if I'd been alone even when she'd claimed to sit beside my bed. One afternoon, I caught sight of myself in the hallway mirror. I looked older than I had a month ago, tired in a way sickness hadn't managed to etch into my face. And I understood something: if I didn't take control, her lies would finish what the infection hadn't. I wasn't ready to leave, not yet. But I knew I couldn't go on pretending the air between us wasn't thick with secrets. I needed a plan, not just to uncover the truth, but to protect what was left of me. That realization steadied my hands for the first time in days. I folded the receipt carefully and slipped it into a drawer, a quiet promise to myself: the next time she tried to twist my reality, I'd be ready. The days after that confrontation dragged by in slow motion. Mara floated through them as if nothing had happened, humming while making breakfast, scrolling her phone at the table, dropping kisses on my cheek before heading out on errands. I played along, careful not to tip my hand, but inside I was drawing lines. One evening, I sat at my desk with a notepad. I wrote 2 columns, what I know and what I need. Under the first, I listed the receipt, the lies about wine, her quick temper when caught. Under the second, I wrote honesty, stability, respect, proof of loyalty. Looking at the words side by side, it was obvious my needs didn't exist in the space she was giving me. I decided to take back some control. The next morning, I called the therapist whose card had been tucked in my hospital discharge papers. I booked a session for myself and asked if she also handled couples work. Just saying the words "I need help" steadied me. That afternoon, I prepared dinner early and waited for Mara to get home. When she walked in, cheeks flushed from the cold, I gestured toward the chair opposite mine. "We need to talk about what comes next," I said. She frowned, tossing her scarf on the couch. "Daniel, are we really doing this again? You're overthinking every little thing." "I'm done overthinking," I replied, keeping my voice calm. "I'm making decisions. I've scheduled therapy, one for me, one for us, if you're willing. I'm not threatening you, Mara, but I won't stay married to someone who treats the truth like an optional extra." She hesitated, eyes narrowing just slightly. "So now you're putting me on trial?" "No," I said quietly, "I'm putting myself back together. I need to know if you're willing to meet me halfway." For a moment, something in her expression flickered: guilt, maybe, or calculation. She finally shrugged. "Fine. I'll go once. But you're being dramatic." Her words were dismissive, but the fact that she didn't storm out told me I'd at least disrupted her script. That night, lying in bed alone, I realized how much strength it had taken simply to plant that boundary. I wasn't naive enough to think one session would solve everything, but it was a step, proof that I still had agency, even in a marriage built on shifting sand. And deep down, I made another promise: if Mara kept choosing shadows, I'd choose daylight, even if it meant walking out into it alone. The morning after I set that boundary, I woke with a strange lightness in my chest, not happiness, but clarity. 4 months I'd felt like I was drifting, waiting for Mara to decide what my life would look like. Now, for the first time, there was a faint outline of a plan. I started small. I cleaned the clutter from my bedside table, tossing out the old hospital wristband I'd kept as a reminder of how far I'd come. I brewed a pot of strong coffee and sat by the window, letting sunlight soak through the glass. Then I opened my journal and wrote a single sentence: I deserve to know the truth about the life I'm living. That day I kept myself busy: short walk, laundry, checking in with a friend from before the illness. I didn't mention Mara's secret, just laughed about old times. But talking to someone who remembered me as more than a patient or a suspicious husband gave me back a sliver of who I'd been. When Mara came home that evening, she found me reading in the living room. I'd left her a note about the therapy appointment and a simple dinner on the counter. Her eyes flicked over the paper, and she gave a tight smile. "I said I'd go, didn't I?" I nodded, calm. "Yes. And I need you to actually show up, not just sit there and glare." She raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. That night I moved officially into the guest room. It wasn't punishment, it was protection. I needed space to heal without the constant tension of her late-night whispers into her phone or the smell of wine clinging to her hair when she slipped into bed. In the quiet of that room, I made a list of next steps. Keep a clear record of her comings and goings. Attend every therapy session, even if she didn't. Reconnect with people who reminded me of my worth. Prepare, mentally and practically, for the possibility that this marriage might end. For the first time since leaving the hospital, I felt capable of shaping my own recovery. Mara's lies hadn't destroyed the man who fought through sickness, they'd only revealed how much strength was still hiding beneath the scars. When I turned off the lamp, the room felt different, still lonely, but steadier. I was no longer waiting to be rescued from uncertainty, I was building a way out, one quiet choice at a time. By the time Wednesday rolled around, the air in our house felt like it was holding its breath. Mara floated in and out of rooms with her usual breezy smile, but there was a new stiffness in her posture, as if she sensed the ground shifting beneath her feet. That evening, I decided to clear my head with a short walk. Passing the small desk where Mara kept her laptop, I noticed the screen faintly glowing. Normally, she slammed it shut if I came near, but tonight she must have forgotten to close the lid. I hesitated, telling myself I wouldn't open anything, just look at what was already visible. A calendar notification sat in the corner, dinner L. The location tag led to a boutique hotel on the edge of town. My stomach lurched. The appointment was set for tonight, just an hour from then. I slipped on my coat and stepped into the cool night. The drive to the hotel was a blur of headlights and rain-speckled glass. I parked across the street, heart hammering, and watched the entrance. 10 minutes later, Mara appeared, dressed in a fitted coat I hadn't seen before. She checked her phone, then smiled at someone emerging from the lobby, a man carrying a leather portfolio. They disappeared inside together. I sat frozen, torn between storming in and staying hidden. In the end, I chose silence, snapping a quick photo through the windshield. My hand shook so hard I nearly dropped the phone. Back home, I waited. When Mara returned later, she tossed her coat over the chair and gave me a practiced smile. Traffic was awful, she said. The pharmacy was out of your vitamins, I'll try again tomorrow. Something inside me steadied. How was the hotel? I asked softly. Her head jerked up, eyes wide before narrowing into a glare. What are you talking about? I saw you tonight, Mara, I said, voice calm. You weren't at a pharmacy. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she laughed, sharp and brittle. Wow. You're spying on me now? That's healthy. I didn't respond, just held her gaze. The silence stretched until she shifted uncomfortably, brushing invisible lint from her sleeve. It was just business, she muttered. You don't understand the art world, people meet in unconventional places. But her explanation couldn't erase the image of her smile at that man. The more she twisted the story, the more certain I became, I was closer to the truth than ever. That night, as she clattered dishes in the kitchen, I sat in the guest room with the photo blowing on my phone. The man staring back at me from the screen looked exhausted, but resolute. I knew the road ahead would be messy, but I'd taken another step out of the fog and there was no turning back. The morning after I caught Mara at the hotel, I woke before dawn, my body tense even before my eyes opened. I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the pale light leaking around the curtains, and knew I couldn't keep letting her write the script for my life. Over coffee, I laid my phone on the table so the photo from the night before was clearly visible. When she walked in, still half asleep, she froze at the sight of it. What's this? She asked, voice clipped. You tell me, I replied. Because it doesn't look like business. She blinked, then gave a small, humorless laugh. Daniel, you followed me? That's not okay. I watched my wife walk into a hotel with a man, I said evenly. That's not okay. For a moment she just stared, weighing which mask to wear. Then she sighed, pressing a hand to her temple. Fine. We had dinner. He's a consultant for an exhibit, and he wanted privacy to discuss funding. It's not what you're making it. Then why lie about vitamins? I asked. Her lips thinned. Because you'd overreact, like you are now. I didn't want to deal with this while you're still fragile. That word, fragile, snapped something inside me. I'd fought through weeks of fever and weakness to be standing here, and she was twisting my survival into an excuse for secrecy. I'm not fragile, I said quietly. I'm just done being lied to. She set her mug down with a sharp clink. You're turning everything into betrayal. Maybe I needed a break from nursing you, from the pressure. Do you have any idea how hard it's been? I let the accusation settle, then answered, yes. And I still showed up every day for my own recovery. That's what commitment looks like. Mara shook her head, retreating into sarcasm. Maybe we should just get you a detective badge, since you're so obsessed with investigating me. I didn't take the bait. Instead, I told her I was meeting with the therapist that afternoon whether she came or not, and that I'd begin looking at options for a trial separation if nothing changed. Her expression flickered anger first, then something like panic, but she didn't argue. She just grabbed her bag and left, the door clicking shut behind her. I sat in the quiet kitchen, staring at the photo on my phone again. The man in the picture wasn't a stranger anymore, he was a symptom of a sickness in my marriage I could no longer ignore. And as much as it hurt, I felt a strange steadiness settle in my chest. I wasn't powerless. I had the truth, and I had the strength to decide what to do with it. The afternoon after Mara stormed out, I sat with the therapist alone. I expected to feel embarrassed explaining everything, but instead there was a strange relief in laying the pieces on the table, the receipt, the hotel, the lies stacked on top of each other. The therapist listened quietly, then said something that stuck. You've already survived the hardest thing, fighting for your life. You don't have to survive dishonesty too. That sentence stayed with me as I drove home. The sky was low and heavy, and for once I felt ready, not anxious. Whatever came next, I wouldn't let myself be twisted into knots anymore. When I walked in, Mara was curled on the sofa with a glass of wine, scrolling through her phone. She didn't look up right away, but I noticed the way her thumb froze mid-scroll when she realized I was watching. We need to finish this conversation, I said, calm but firm. She gave an exaggerated sigh. Daniel, I've had a long day. Can we not start another interrogation? It's not an interrogation. It's our life. I sat across from her, laying the photo from the hotel on the table. I want the truth, not half versions. Who is he? Her expression hardened. You're obsessed. He's a consultant, I told you. Consultants don't meet married women in boutique hotels at night, I said quietly. Something in her eyes wavered, then she lashed out. You don't understand what it was like when you were sick. I held everything together while you drifted in and out of fevers. Do you know how lonely that was? Her words landed like a slap, but underneath them I could see the core. She was choosing justification over honesty. Loneliness doesn't give you permission to gamble with someone else's trust, I said. If you wanted out, you could have said so. Instead, you built a parallel life and left me in the dark. She stared at the floor, shoulders tight, and for the first time she didn't have an instant retort. The silence was heavy but not hopeless, it felt like a door creaking open on its hinges. I can't fix this if you won't stop lying, I added. If you still want us, we start with full honesty. If you don't, then we separate. For a heartbeat, she looked almost small, stripped of all her practiced wit. She opened her mouth, closed it again, and finally whispered, I don't know if I can give you what you want. That was the clearest thing she'd said in weeks. I stood, not angry, just resolved. Then I need to start planning for a future that doesn't leave me guessing. That night I packed a small bag, not to leave forever, but to give myself space at a friend's guest room. As I zipped it shut, I felt grief, yes, but also a deep breath I hadn't taken in months. I was no longer trapped inside her story. Hello again, friends, and thank you to everyone who's followed this journey and offered advice. Writing it all out has helped me stay grounded through some of the hardest months of my life. After I spent a few nights at my friend's house, everything came into focus. I woke up without the constant tension of waiting for Mara's stories to shift. I could breathe, make coffee, even smile at small things, a sunrise, a song on the radio, without wondering where she was or what she was hiding. When Mara finally asked to meet, I agreed, but on neutral ground, a quiet cafe near the river. She arrived looking tired, but still trying to keep a mask in place. Over tea, she admitted she'd crossed lines she couldn't uncross, dinners, nights away, secrets she'd kept even while I was fighting for my life. She said she'd felt trapped, overwhelmed by my illness, unsure how to ask for space. I listened, but inside I knew something had ended. Illness had shown me how fragile a body can be, but betrayal taught me how fragile trust is and how precious peace becomes once you claw it back. We agreed on a separation. There were no fireworks, just a quiet acceptance that the love we'd once said couldn't survive so many lies. Driving home, I felt grief, but also strength. I'd fought for my life in a hospital bed, now I was fighting for a future where honesty mattered more than appearances. To anyone reading this who senses the ground shifting under their feet, trust your instincts. Ask hard questions. Protect your heart. You deserve truth, even if it hurts. Thank you for walking beside me through this story. If it's given you clarity or courage, please leave a like or comment. Your words might be the anchor someone else needs tonight. Goodbye, and take care of yourselves.